By 2026, over 1 in 4 Canadians could be priced out of basic housing, while the country's national debt races past $1.3 trillion. Emergency rooms are overflowing, wildfires are breaking records, and trust in the government is falling fast. It sounds like the plot of a disaster movie, but this is real and unfolding in Canada right now. A nation once praised for stability and quality of life is quietly edging toward a breaking point. What's coming next might not just shock you, it could completely change the future of the country. From economic collapse to political division and climate chaos, the warning signs are everywhere, but no one's talking about them. In this video, we are uncovering 10 disturbing reasons why Canada could be headed for a serious collapse by 2026, and the last few will truly leave you speechless. So buckle up, because what's coming isn't just surprising, it's downright terrifying.
Number 1. A housing crisis spiraling out of control. Canada's housing market isn't just overheated, it's on fire. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, the average price of a detached home has skyrocketed to over $1.6 million, making home ownership a distant dream for most Canadians. Even in smaller cities, prices have surged far beyond the reach of middle-class families. Young adults are staying with parents longer, and first-time buyers are being forced into massive debt or pushed out of the market entirely. But it's not just about buying. Rent prices are exploding too, with double-digit increases across nearly every major urban center in 2024. And the real kicker? According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, we need 3.5 million new homes by 2030 to restore affordability, but construction is falling dangerously behind. Builders are slowing down due to high interest rates, labor shortages, and skyrocketing material costs. It's a perfect storm. Not enough supply, too much demand, and a population growing faster than the system can handle. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's creating a ripple effect. Mental health issues, rising homelessness, and economic inequality are all linked to housing stress. For many, the dream of owning a home has turned into a daily nightmare of juggling rent, bills, and uncertainty. If this trend continues, 2026 may mark a breaking point, a time when Canadians no longer believe the system works for them. And when that belief disappears, social unrest isn't far behind. So ask yourself, what happens when a country's most basic need, shelter, becomes a luxury? If this shocked you, smash that like button to help more people wake up to what's happening. Subscribe for the next big warning, and stay with us because the next reason might hit even closer to home.
Number 2. Record levels of immigration without infrastructure planning. Canada is known for being a welcoming nation, but even the warmest welcome needs a plan. In recent years, the country has dramatically increased its immigration targets, reaching over 500,000 new permanent residents annually, a record-breaking number by historical standards. While immigration is vital for economic growth and addressing labor shortages, the pace and scale of this surge are creating cracks in Canada's already strained infrastructure. Cities are growing faster than they can build. Public transit systems are overcrowded, schools are bursting at the seams, and healthcare facilities are overwhelmed. In places like Ontario and British Columbia, newcomers are facing years-long waits for housing and healthcare, not because they're unwelcome, but because the system simply isn't ready. Local governments are sounding the alarm, saying they weren't given the resources or time to scale up services. At the same time, a silent tension is building. With housing in short supply and costs skyrocketing, some Canadians are beginning to blame immigrants for problems rooted in poor government planning. This kind of scapegoating isn't just unfair, it's dangerous. It risks deepening divisions, fostering resentment, and feeding a narrative that pits communities against each other. What makes this more alarming is that federal targets for immigration are still rising, with projections showing even larger numbers by 2026. Yet there's still no national strategy to ensure that cities can absorb this growth sustainably. Experts warn that if Canada doesn't align immigration policies with infrastructure investments, the result could be social instability, increased poverty, and growing dissatisfaction among both newcomers and longtime residents. Canada has always prided itself on being inclusive, but inclusion without preparation can quickly turn into chaos. And by 2026, the consequences of that oversight may become impossible to ignore.
Number 3. Rising national debt and fiscal instability. Canada's debt levels have quietly reached historic highs, and the consequences are beginning to show. As of 2024, the national debt has crossed $1.2 trillion, and it's climbing fast. That means every Canadian, from newborns to seniors, carries a share of over $30,000, and that number is growing by the day. While some debt is normal for modern economies, what's alarming is the rate of increase and the shrinking room for financial maneuvering. The government has been borrowing heavily to fund pandemic recovery, housing programs, healthcare, and other public services. But now, with interest rates higher than they've been in over a decade, the cost of servicing that debt is ballooning. In fact, more tax dollars are now going toward paying interest than into some essential services like childcare and infrastructure. This is not just unsustainable, it's dangerous. By 2026, Canada could face a credit rating downgrade if this trend continues. That would make borrowing even more expensive and further limit the government's ability to respond to economic shocks or global crises. It could also shake investor confidence, leading to market volatility and a potential decline in the Canadian dollar. The debt burden doesn't just affect the government, it trickles down to everyday Canadians. With mounting fiscal pressure, we may see higher taxes, cuts to public services, and delays in critical infrastructure projects. The middle class, already squeezed by inflation and housing costs, could find themselves footing the bill for years of overspending. In short, Canada is spending like a wealthy country, but borrowing like a desperate one. Without a clear plan to rein in debt and build long-term economic resilience, the country risks entering 2026 in a far more fragile state than most citizens realize.
Number 4. Healthcare system on the verge of collapse. Canada's universal healthcare system has long been a point of national pride, but today it's straining under pressure like never before. Emergency rooms are overflowing, wait times for surgeries and specialist appointments have reached record highs, and many Canadians are going months, even years, without access to a family doctor. In rural areas, some communities have lost access to basic medical services altogether. Healthcare workers are exhausted and burning out. Nurses are quitting in record numbers, citing unsafe working conditions and overwhelming workloads. Doctors are stretched thin, and many are leaving public practice altogether. Hospitals in several provinces have already had to close ERs temporarily due to staffing shortages, something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Adding fuel to the fire, Canada's aging population is rapidly increasing the demand for care. By 2026, a significant portion of the population will be over 65, placing even more stress on hospitals, long-term care homes, and home care services. Meanwhile, medical school enrollment and training programs haven't expanded quickly enough to meet the coming wave of retirements in the healthcare sector. At the same time, provincial governments are locked in funding battles with the federal government, delaying crucial investments and reforms. The result is a system that feels less like a public service and more like a crumbling safety net, where timely care is becoming a luxury instead of a guarantee. If this trajectory continues, by 2026, Canada could face a full-blown healthcare crisis, where only the wealthy can afford fast quality care through private options, and everyone else is left waiting and suffering. A nation once known for compassion and care may find itself confronting the brutal reality of a healthcare system pushed beyond its limits. Number 5. Economic over-reliance on housing and government spending. Canada's economy may appear stable on the surface, but underneath, it's dangerously unbalanced.
A growing number of economists are warning that the country is far too dependent on real estate and government spending to drive growth. In fact, housing-related industries now make up nearly 10% of Canada's GDP, an unusually high proportion for a developed economy. When housing prices go up, the economy looks strong. But if they fall, the ripple effects could be devastating. This over-reliance on real estate has created what some experts are calling a housing bubble economy. Construction jobs, mortgage lending, home renovations, and real estate transactions are all booming, but it's not sustainable. If interest rates stay high or consumer demand drops, the housing market could crash, triggering a deep recession across multiple sectors. Meanwhile, productivity and innovation, the real engines of long-term prosperity, are lagging behind. Canada ranks poorly in investment in research and development compared to other G7 countries. Instead of building a diverse and resilient economy, the country has leaned on short-term gains from housing and massive public spending to keep things afloat. Government stimulus has helped cushion economic blows in recent years, but it comes at a cost. With debt levels rising and interest payments consuming a larger share of the budget, Canada has fewer tools left to fight the next economic downturn. If a global slowdown, housing market correction, or debt crisis hits in the next couple of years, Canada's fragile economic foundation could be exposed. By 2026, the country may be forced to confront a painful truth. It has spent too long chasing real estate profits and government programs and not enough time investing in a diverse, innovative, and future-proof economy. The fallout could be swift and brutal.
Number 6. Political polarization and rising discontent. Canada has long been viewed as a beacon of political stability and civility, but that reputation is beginning to fracture. Over the past few years, the country has seen a sharp rise in political polarization, with public discourse becoming more hostile, divisive, and emotionally charged. Social media has only amplified the divide, turning complex policy debates into us versus them shouting matches. Issues like climate change, gun control, pandemic responses, and freedom of speech have become deeply politicized, with little room for compromise. Trust in politicians, mainstream media, and public institutions is eroding. More Canadians are feeling disillusioned with the system, believing that government no longer represents the average citizen, but instead caters to elites, corporations, or special interest groups. Protests are becoming more frequent and more intense. The Freedom Convoy of 2022 was just the beginning, a sign of deeper frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Since then, anti-government sentiment has spread, and fringe political movements are gaining traction, fueled by conspiracy theories and misinformation. If this trend continues, Canada could find itself entering 2026 with a fractured national identity. Regional divides, especially between Western provinces and Ottawa, may widen, leading to increased talk of separation, autonomy, or political revolt. Even within communities, polarization is breaking families and friendships, creating a society where collaboration and empathy are in short supply. The real danger isn't just in having opposing views, it's in the growing refusal to listen, to compromise, or to find common ground. A healthy democracy requires debate, but when that debate turns to hostility and extremism, the foundation begins to crack. Canada isn't immune to the forces tearing at other democracies around the world, and unless a major course correction is made, 2026 could mark a point of no return in the country's social cohesion.
Number 7. Youth mental health crisis. Canada is facing a youth mental health crisis that's deepening with every passing year, and by 2026, it may reach a critical breaking point. Across the country, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts are rising sharply among teens and young adults. According to recent data, nearly 1 in 4 Canadian youth now report experiencing significant mental health struggles, a figure that has surged since the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's not just the pandemic to blame.
Young people are growing up in a world filled with economic uncertainty, social media pressure, climate anxiety, and fear of the future. Many feel disconnected, unheard, and overwhelmed. Social media platforms, while offering connection, often fuel comparison, cyberbullying, and unrealistic expectations. The result is a generation more plugged in, but emotionally drained. At the same time, access to mental health services remains severely limited. Waitlists for therapy and psychiatric care can stretch for months, especially in public systems. In some provinces, there are entire regions with little to no mental health support specifically for youth. Schools are overwhelmed, counselors are overburdened, and families often don't know where to turn. This growing crisis isn't just a personal struggle, it's a national issue. As mental health challenges rise, they impact academic performance, workforce readiness, and long-term societal well-being. A generation that feels hopeless is one less likely to contribute positively to Canada's future. If left unaddressed, 2026 could mark the point where mental health becomes the defining issue of an entire generation, fueling further disconnection, disillusionment, and social unrest. Without urgent, targeted action and investment, Canada risks losing its future leaders, innovators, and changemakers to a silent epidemic that is already taking hold. The consequences will echo far beyond the classroom or clinic. They will shape the country's destiny.
Number 8. Climate change and natural disasters. Canada, often seen as a vast and resilient landscape, is now feeling the relentless impact of climate change, and the situation is escalating fast. In just the past 2 years, the country has experienced some of the worst wildfires in recorded history, burning millions of hectares, displacing entire communities, and choking major cities with toxic smoke for weeks. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a growing pattern that scientists warn will become more severe and frequent by 2026. Extreme heat waves, prolonged droughts, and sudden floods are becoming the new normal. Coastal regions in British Columbia and Atlantic Canada face rising sea levels and stronger storms, threatening infrastructure and livelihoods. The Arctic is warming at nearly 4 times the global average, causing permafrost to thaw and ice to disappear at alarming rates. This not only affects local ecosystems, but has global implications, accelerating climate feedback loops that make the situation worse. Canada's economy is also vulnerable. Agriculture is being disrupted by shifting weather patterns, while insurance companies are raising premiums or withdrawing coverage in high-risk areas. The cost of climate-related disasters in 2023 alone exceeded $3 billion, and experts predict that number could double or triple within just a few years if no action is taken. Despite these warning signs, policy action remains slow and fragmented. Government pledges often fall short of implementation, and industries continue to push back against regulations. If this inertia continues, by 2026, Canada may find itself woefully unprepared for a climate future that's already knocking at the door. The myth that Canada is somehow safe from climate change is quickly crumbling. The reality is harsher, and if left unchecked, the damage to both land and lives could be irreversible.
Number 9. Declining trust in media and institutions. Trust is the foundation of any functioning democracy, and in Canada, that trust is starting to erode at an alarming pace. According to a recent survey, only about 30% of Canadians say they trust the mainstream media, a sharp decline from previous decades. Government institutions, public health agencies, and even the justice system are facing similar skepticism. This growing distrust is not just a cultural shift, it's a national vulnerability. Canadians are increasingly turning to alternative sources of information, many of which are unregulated, biased, or outright false. Social media algorithms heed echo chambers, where conspiracy theories spread faster than facts, and public discourse becomes a battlefield of misinformation. Events like the pandemic, political protests, and economic instability have only intensified feelings of betrayal and disillusionment among large segments of the population.
This decline in trust isn't just about frustration, it's undermining collective action. When people stop believing in the institutions meant to protect them, they're less likely to follow laws, respect expert advice, or engage in civic life. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Distrust leads to disengagement, which leads to further institutional weakness and more distrust. Media outlets are also struggling to survive financially, reducing staff and cutting investigative journalism, the very kind of reporting that holds power accountable. In its place, we often see clickbait headlines, polarized opinion pieces, and shallow coverage of deeply complex issues. As a result, Canadians are left less informed and more divided. If this trend continues, by 2026, Canada could enter a post-truth era where facts are optional and narratives replace reality. A society that can't agree on what's true, or even who to trust, risks losing not only its ability to solve problems, but its very identity as a unified nation. The warning signs are already here, and they're growing louder.
Number 10. Global geopolitical shifts threatening Canada's security. While Canada has long benefited from its peaceful reputation and strong alliances, the global landscape is changing rapidly, and not necessarily in Canada's favor. Tensions between major world powers like the United States, China, and Russia are heating up, and Canada may find itself caught in the crossfire of a new era of geopolitical instability. By 2026, the world could look very different, and Canada may no longer be as shielded from global conflict and disruption as it once was. One of the biggest concerns is Canada's growing dependence on the United States. While the US has always been a close ally, recent political instability and rising isolationism south of the border raise serious questions about how reliable that alliance will remain. If the US retreats from global leadership or faces internal turmoil, Canada could be left exposed without strong diplomatic or military backing. Meanwhile, tensions in the Asia-Pacific region are escalating. A potential conflict over Taiwan, increasing cyber warfare, and aggressive posturing from authoritarian states could disrupt global trade routes, cripple supply chains, and drive up prices for everything from energy to food. As a trade-dependent nation, Canada is highly vulnerable to such shocks. Another pressing concern is Canada's limited military capacity. Despite its vast territory and strategic Arctic position, the country has long underinvested in defense. If geopolitical conflicts spill over or cyber attacks target critical infrastructure, Canada may not be ready to respond effectively. Additionally, foreign interference in elections, espionage, and disinformation campaigns are becoming more sophisticated, raising the threat of internal destabilization from external actors. By 2026, the risks posed by global power shifts won't be hypothetical. They'll be knocking at Canada's door. The question isn't if Canada will be affected, it's how badly and how soon. Canada is often seen as a safe, stable, and prosperous nation, but as we've explored, that image is starting to crack. From a housing market spiraling out of control to rising debt, political polarization, a collapsing healthcare system, and global instability, the warning signs are not just real, they're multiplying. And while 2026 might sound far away, many of these issues are already unfolding right now. This isn't about fear, it's about facing reality. A country can only stay strong if it confronts its problems head-on. The good news? Awareness is power. When citizens are informed, they can demand better leadership, smarter policies, and stronger communities. But if we ignore the signs, the consequences could be far more devastating than most Canadians are prepared for. So now we want to hear from you. What do you think is the biggest threat facing Canada right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear this. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive videos that go beyond the headlines. And remember, the future isn't written yet, but if we don't pay attention, it might be written for us.